Hi, I'm Giles Dudley. I'm a senior business developer from the BII Innovation Institute in Copenhagen, and I'm delighted to present our new funding calls to the EATx community. And we have two calls, our Creation House programme, which is about 1.5 million euros over 18 months, and we have our Venture Lab programme, which is about €500,000 euros over 12 months. I think this is particularly relevant to the EATx community because of some of the great research that you'll be carrying out.
So for those of you who don't know, the BioInnovation Institute is a commercial charitable foundation funded by the Novo Nordisk Foundation. So last year, we were actually formally a part of the Novo Nordisk Foundation, but we spun out late last year, and we were spun out with a large grant from the foundation of up to 470 million euros. And the purpose of that grant is to allow the BII to take science from all over the world, incubate it at the BII, and create great companies and products that can take their products to market for the benefits of people and society. Next slide, please. And that's encapsulated here in our vision and mission. So our vision is to support this science and this innovation so that we can actually benefit people in society. So I'll highlight again that we're a nonprofit, and the reason we exist is to fill that gap that exists in the market right now. The way we do it is in our mission. We aim to be catalyzers of commercialization, and we do that via the mechanism of companies or startups. And there are 4 pillars to our offerings to you as potential applicants. That's knowledge, network, funding, and infrastructure. And we'll talk more about that as we move along. Next slide, please. So clearly everyone recognizes this. I imagine many of the audience here are academics. Many of the audience here are thinking about, how do I commercialize my idea? And there's this gap between where you are and what's fundable. And our goal at the BII is to find that technology that, with the funds and offerings that we have, that we can actually take that science across this bridge and bring it to investors and industry so that the companies can take their next steps. So we've existed since 2018, and I would say that we have initial proof of concept, to use scientific terms, on the hypothesis, and that our hypothesis is correct. Basically, that there's great science out there, and that funded properly and packaged properly, working with the right people, we'll get some results. The numbers sort of speak for themselves. We've funded 85 projects to date. We funded them with a total of 360 million kroner. Most importantly, these companies have raised 275 million kroner of additional funding. That's both a combination of grants, but also equity financing from established professional investors. And that, for us, is the surrogate marker of success. We fund our companies in convertible loans. So we've done 23 of these to date. And a conversion of a loan means that an event has happened and that we've converted that loan into equity. We're partial owners of the company, but more importantly, someone else has put money in the company, is now also an owner. And we've reviewed 480 projects to date, and it's quite important to say that we do have a selective process, and for us, we're looking for fundability as a key criteria. And so that's what we've achieved so far in 2018. Our plans are to scale up, and we'll continue to grant to do these projects and loans at the rate we're going in perpetuity, essentially. So our funding allows to fund up to 2030 and deploy over about 2.5 billion kroner into what we're doing. I think it's fair to say we're one of the best funded, if not the best funded incubator in the world. So who is BII for? With regards to this process of applications, it's important to note that we work in 3 separate areas. We work in therapeutics, bioindustrials, and health tech. So therapeutics is sort of well understood. Most of our portfolio is therapeutics. It sort of that represents the industry that we have in our area and the scientific base that we have. We also are working in the areas of bioindustrials and health tech, and this is extremely important to us that we expand these platforms. They're clearly super important for patient impact. They're super important for societal impact, and this is something we've committed ourselves to build out these platforms. So we highly encourage applicants in the area of bioindustrials and health tech as well. We talked about this previously. The 4 pillars of what we offer our startups are knowledge, network, funding, and infrastructure, and they're essential, and we'll go through them one by one. So knowledge, that's essentially the BII staff. So the BD team consists of 9 people. We also have a science and technology team. We have an operations team. Everyone is represented here. I think what's important here is we are measured at the BII by the success of our startups. So essentially, during your journey at the BII, this is an extended part of your team. Each of the companies that work at the BII have a BD anchor, as we call it, so a liaison to the BD that's part of my team, which helps ensure that you have access to that person's knowledge, experience, but also to the broader BII network, so that you can leverage those partners and network for future success. And I'll say it one more time because I think it's important. We don't win unless our portfolio companies win, and that's certainly not always. Sometimes it's a wonderful, smooth, easy process because the science speaks for itself and the team's in place. But a lot of times it requires hard work and discussions to move along the right path. But we take those, and we hope that our applicants do so as well. Next step, please. So our partners. So our partners help us bring our research to market, and we have a whole plethora of different types of partnerships. And I imagine if we scroll forward, we'll see what they are. Yeah, and I think today we'll take the opportunity to announce that we have our newest partnership with WuXi AppTech. So WuXi is a contract research organization, originally based in China, but now a global organization. And the reason we're working with WuXi is that, first of all, they cover many different topics. They provide those services at a high quality. We've also arranged for a discount. And what we're trying to do with working with WuXi is to professionalize the work that's ongoing in the companies. So the point of the BII is not to fund work in your laboratories, but rather to form a company, professionalize that company, and accelerate the company. We believe that's best by working where it makes most sense to work with contract research organizations that also work with pharma and other industry players. So welcome to WuXi, and I believe Dave is on the call. And near the end of this process, if any of you are interested in applying, we'd also recommend reaching out to WuXi with your applications so that you can get some costings on your project from them. So in addition to that partnership we're announcing today, we have a series of other partnerships. Moving left to right on this slide, we work with Quilter Partners to help you find your team. We place great emphasis on advancing your team and making sure you have the right team required for success. We work with PwC to set up your accounting systems. We work with Back Bay Life Science Advisors in the US to give subsidized market assessment. We work with Loon & Co., which works on investor relations. And we work with a variety of business acceleration partners, such as Zacco, Heuber, and Plessner, to work on your IP and legal frameworks. And finally, we've just recently entered into arrangement with Innovate, which will help you write soft funding applications for EU grants and Danish grants, which is a critical part of bridging the gap between where you are and where your company can eventually raise further financing. Excellent. So this is the funding part. So we arrange our funding in 4 different programs: Venture Lab, Creation House, Residents, and Faculty. We'll talk today about Venture Lab and Creation House. These are both funded by convertible debt, and they're both here to bring your company from where you are to a point where, on this slide, in the Euro slide, a point where someone else, a professional investor, is willing to take it on and move it forward. If one graduates from Creation House and applies to the resident program, it is possible to join the BII is resident, where essentially your lab, you can use our lab space, you can use our office space, you can continue at the BII and grow there while you're there. So for the Venture Lab and Creation House, we're talking about 4 million kroner for the Venture Lab program and 10 million kroner for the Creation House program. So in the grand scheme of product development, this is not a lot of money, but our experience is that this is a lot of money for the applicants where they are and what else is available to them. And in many cases, together with soft funding, it is the right amount of money to move the case to where it needs to be in order to attract real financing to take the company forward. Finally, infrastructure. We have the BII laboratories, we have the BII office space. We're located currently on the 3rd floor of the Cobus building. The BII team is there. We are trying to build a community at BII so that people are there, people are present, people are working with our team, and our lab space is available as well. To the extent it makes sense, we would encourage applicants to perform their experiments at the BII, to build up their laboratory staff at the BII. If it makes most sense to run it at a different lab, or if it makes most sense to outsource it, that's what you should do. But this infrastructure is available for the companies. Very good. With that introduction, I'll stop there and introduce Maria and ask her to talk about Venture Lab.
Thank you, Bobby. Venture Lab is our accelerator program, is our earliest program. It's a biannual program, meaning that there'll be 2 calls a year. We will take 5 startups per cohort. The program will last 12 months, and like Bobby mentioned before, is a 4 million Danish krone convertible loan. And the purpose of the Venture Lab is really to support early stage founders in their journey from cutting edge transformative ideas into validated concepts. We want this to be the place where you come and test and experiment and pivot very quickly if things are not working. So it's a place to come with hypotheses and test them out very quickly. And that could mean either scientific hypothesis, but also market hypothesis. So for example, if you have a new ingredient, in which type of market does that make more sense? This is the place to really explore. And the purpose of Venture Lab is also that by the end of it, you would be ready to get a seed funding round. With Venture Lab, you will have access to our lab facilities. You will have a dedicated BII anchor that Bobby also mentioned before. You'll have a person from the business development team that will personally guide you and your startup through this process. And also you have in-kind partner services from a lot of the partners that Bobby also introduced before. And Venture Lab is really based on what we call the 3 pillars of a good startup, which is science and technology, it's the team, and it's the business and commercialization of your invention. So in terms of your scientific and technology pillar, you will get a dedicated scientific advisor that will help you really think through what are the key experiments you need to perform and guide you through that process. In terms of team, we really want to put an emphasis on team. A lot of people talk about how mental health is important. How do you move from being an academic leader to a startup leader? So we're going to have a lot of workshops on both competencies, but also leadership, and also on how to recruit, for example. And in terms of business, you will have, like I mentioned before, a dedicated BII anchor, but also we're going to have, it's an accelerator program, so we're going to have these crunch weeks where 1 week of every month, you're going to focus on a different topic that will help you accelerate your business. And that could be pitch training, visual identity, market, competitors, fundraising, strategy. It'll be a lot of different things. How do I move to the next slide? Oh, there you go. So what is, you want to now be part of Venture Lab, but what is the minimum that you need to be able to apply for Venture Lab? We wanted to make it really, really easy so we could get the best projects possible. In terms of technology, we only need evidence-based ideas. If you have data, that is great. If you have someone else's data that will support your hypothesis and why you think this new step would make sense, that's also okay. So the important thing here is that it needs to be scientifically based ideas, but you don't have to have a lot of data there. In terms of team, the only requirement we have is of the founding team. And in terms of business and commercial, what we would request of you is that you have a very clear understanding of what is your value proposition. And basically by that, I mean, what is it that makes your idea special? What does it differentiate it from everything else that's out there in the world? And a little bit more on the science track, like I mentioned before, you will get a scientific advisor. That is someone we have identified with scientific experience in the key area of your startup. So not just someone that is someone from R&D in some other company, for example. And like I mentioned before, they will help you identify what are your crucial scientific experiments, and they'll give you ongoing support on testing and validation of these experiments. And this is someone you should meet once a month with. And it's people it could be experts that we contacted during the due diligence process of selecting your company. It could be another person from a BII company that is ahead in their development plans, but that has had a very similar experience or very similar area than that your company also has. Or it can be an expert from one of our industrial partnerships. In terms of the business track, next slide, please. We have these crunch weeks that I mentioned where you're going to learn a lot about new vocabulary that especially if you're like me and you came from a scientific background, there's a lot of new words, but you learn it very quickly. You're gonna get introduced to new tools to use to help you accelerate your commercialization. You're gonna be introduced to case studies in the 3 different therapeutics, bioindustrials, and health tech, so that you have something that you can relate to. And you also have some talks from some inspiring international networks. So usually people from other companies that will come and talk a little bit about the theme of that month. And you start all of this process with a kickoff bootcamp, where we align on the goals for what you want to achieve at the end, and where you meet all the other companies and the other teams. And then we go through, like I mentioned, each different topic every month, and we end on a demo day where you'll present to everyone what you've achieved in the last year. And finally, in terms of our team pillar, next slide, please. We really want to build skilled founders. And for that, we have come with founder halos and team workshops. So we're really going to focus on leading the self and leading others. In terms of leading self, we're going to create these founder halos, which are confidential learning and support group. It sounds a little bit like Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's not. But it's something, it's like a safe space that will enable you to transform from a scientist to a startup founder. Is where you can discuss how the stresses of having a startup. How do you manage your energy levels? How do you deal with negative emotions? How do you keep focus and motivation? On the other hand, you also have workshops on how to lead others. How do you work in psychological safety in teams, for example? How do you now figure out who are the next people you need for your company? And how do you go about motivating all these people and recruiting them? Yeah, so we really hope that all these 3 pillars will really help you accelerate your startup. And this is Venture Lab. Matthias will now talk about Creation House.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthias. I'm going to talk about the Creation House program. And as mentioned before, it's an 18-month program. You get 10 million Danish kroners in form of a convertible loan. and we run the call twice a year. And we take 5 startups per call. The purpose of Creation House is really to support founders in their journey to successful Series A fundraising. And similar to Venture Lab, you have access to lab facilities if you need them. You work with a dedicated BII anchor. For example, in the beginning, you would create a development plan for the time in Creation House. And the BII anchor is really sort of a sparring partner for your company. You also have access to in-kind partner services. So next we look at the entry-level criteria for Creation House. And the maturity level that you need to have for Creation House is basically the maturity level that you have at the end of Venture Lab. So if you go to the Venture Lab program, you should also be able to apply for Creation House afterwards. But of course, you can also apply directly for Creation House if you already are at that maturity level. And I will quickly go through the different points here. So at the technology pillar for therapeutics, we would expect that companies already have cellular proof of concept for their compound. For bioindustrials, companies need to have a high producing strain that is scale-up ready. And for health tech, we think that companies need to have a minimal viable product with proof of concept. At the team side, founders should have a clear plan for the staffing of the Creation House of their company. For example, they need to have a candidate profile of an industry experienced chairperson. So someone who's really experienced, who can help mature the company, and someone who has a proven track record of successful Series A financings. If you're in need of a project manager, you should also have a candidate profile for such a position. On the commercial side, companies need to have validated their value proposition. For example, by going out to the industry and innovation ecosystem, commercial partner, or VC. So in the Creation House program, you will continue to work on these 3 pillars: technology, team, and commercial. So that's very similar to Venture Lab. But in addition, there's a very strong focus in the Creation House program to prepare you for discussions with investors and also create opportunities for you to meet investors. And here you can see a couple of the elements in the Creation House program. For example, in the beginning, we have the VC Bootcamp. That's an offsite event of approximately 2 days. Here, we will talk about what investors actually want to see from companies. We will talk about what's the perfect pitch, what kind of pitch deck do you have to deliver, what should the team look like, what are typical questions that investors ask. And we will also invite investors to hear firsthand their view on these questions. We will also talk about what is a good looking term sheet, for example, what is a fair valuation of a company, what is an ideal syndicate of investors for a company, so that you feel comfortable with these topics and can also discuss them with investors. Next, we have workshops. In addition to this, these are monthly workshops that we organize. We will touch upon a couple of topics that we also discuss in the VC Bootcamp, but we go into more details here. In addition, we have more topics lined up. For example, we'll talk about soft funding, what is the good board practice, regulatory strategies. So we have several topics lined up, but we also have available time slots. So if there's a certain need that we see or where companies want to know more about a certain area, we can also organize these workshops for you. Then we have a topic around the governance of the companies. As I mentioned in the beginning, the BII anchor works very closely with the company and the CEO in the beginning. Over the time, we want to bring in a chairperson who is experienced, can help the company develop. The reason for this is that we want the company to become more and more independent from the BII anchor. Additionally, we're looking for a chairperson who's really experienced and has a proven track record of successful Series A fundraising, so that the company can really benefit from its expertise and also has access to an extended investor network. We will form an initial board that consists of the chairperson, the BII anchor, founder, and potentially co-founders, just to have this typical structure of a board already in place, so that the CEO has regular meetings with this initial board and that we have good discussions. And finally, we want to create opportunities for the companies to meet investors. So we are organizing regular VC network pitches where we invite Creation House companies to pitch. Here we can test your pitch, your new deck, your storytelling, and get valuable feedback from the investors. We're organizing these on a monthly basis. And of course, we hope that in one of the sessions that you will find your investor. So in summary, in Creation House, in the program, you work on these 3 pillars, technology, team, and business. And then we prepare you with tools, the right mindset, and also that you develop the confidence to go out, talk to investors, and be successful in your fundraising.
Very good. I'll add a little bit of context to what Matthias said around Creation House and eligibility. When we say candidate profile, it does not mean you need to have a person identified and agreed. What we mean is you've given some thought to the type of person that you would like, so that we during Creation House can help you find that person and talk to you about the spec of the people you'd like to add. Also on the board, just to be clear, we have CEO separate from founder. In Creation House, the founders can be CEOs. That's actually quite normal in Creation House. Very good. BII calls. The way it works, we have an open call. It's open right now. It closes sometime, I believe, in February. At which point the BD team will do a pre-screen and select shortlisted candidates, initial shortlist. Those candidates that have not been shortlisted at that time will receive notice from the BII that you're no longer part of the process. We'll try and give you feedback at that time, but it is not part of our default state to give feedback to those that are not shortlisted. Those that are shortlisted move forward into our diligence program, where the BII team, especially Maria and Matthias, coordinate diligence. They will speak to KOLs. They will work with our commercial advisors, Back Bay. They'll work with IP advisors such as Heuber and Zacco to understand your IP situation. They'll also work with regulatory advisors and specialist advisors such as Lux and Clevo. We take all of that and we collate it. We make a further shortlist at that time, and those companies are presented to our program advisory groups. So we have 3 program advisory groups in each area. The program advisory groups consist of VC firms, and these are tier 1 premier VC firms in each of these areas. So they're representatives from each of the firms, plus some experts as well. They will have seen all the diligence material. They will have seen your application, and this is an opportunity for the applicants to pitch to the advisory group. It's a 10-minute pitch with some question and answer. The advisory group advises the BII and the BD team as to what they believe are the best deals for us. We take that on board, and the BII submits to our board for approval. So clear points here. If one is shortlisted, when you're going to the advisory group, you'll be assigned an anchor. Your anchor is actually working with you at that time to put your best foot forward in front of the advisory group. I would say just being a shortlisted company is a valuable step in your journey, because you will get an audience and an opportunity to present to these 5 VC companies in each of your industries. So I highly recommend you apply, if only to get to that audience and to learn the diligence, learn about your company via our diligence. And super. So here's some guidelines for the applicants based on 4 parameters. I think the overall theme here that we want to address is what does it mean to have a company at the BII? So I wanted to talk a bit more in detail about the actual funding. Who do we fund? What do we fund? What happens to your intellectual property? Who do you collaborate with? And where will you physically be? So currently, BII funds Danish companies with founder-friendly convertible debt. So the founders of the project, the scientific project, are the owners of the company. So you create a company with yourself as owners. At this time, the BII cannot fund companies that have had professional investment, and that is just a restriction we have from the source of our current funding. You do not need to have a company when you apply. You can form the company after the BII has informed you that we have a mandate to provide a loan. What you do need to have is an idea of who's going to be the owners of your company. So this would typically be the postdoc, the professors, everyone who's involved in the scientific formation of the idea. They become owners of the company. So the terms of our loans are convertible loan notes. So essentially, this is a loan from us to the company. The loan at its core needs to be paid back at some point. But the way in which this is founder friendly is that the interest rates are quite low. We take no security, so there's no reach through to your personal assets as a founder. What you're putting on the line is the company itself and your efforts there. The maturity is 3 years. And then there's a conversion. This is convertible debt. So if you are successful in your time at the BII, you will have an investor that wants to invest in your company. We will convert our shares, our loan, into shares at the same price that they want to convert it. The longer it takes for that conversion to happen, the greater the conversion discount will take. So this is quite technical. We can take that on a one-on-one basis. Importantly, in Venture Lab, there's an ownership cap. We will never own more than 25% of your company. And importantly, when we will convert into common shares. We will convert into the same share type that you have. Typically in this industry, venture investors or industry will take preference shares, meaning they get paid before you do and have certain rights that founders do not. We wish to stand by our founders, and we will take shares equivalent to yours. So this is quite important. Next slide. Sorry, I have the control. So intellectual property. Many of you will be coming from university. Once you form your Danish company, that Danish company licenses the background IP from the university, or if you're a spin out from a larger company, you license the background IP for the product that you wish to create from the originating company on market terms. And this will be something that the BII team looks at with regards to the terms of your license. The reason we say market terms, because if it is not market terms, you will not be successful at raising further funds. Your future investors will look at this and go, this is too expensive, I'm not interested. So we need to make sure upfront that wherever it's originating from, university or company, that it's on market terms. You can collaborate with, the company can collaborate with whatever groups are required to get their products off the ground. This can be with the founding laboratory. So if the founding laboratory has certain assays or know-how or things that cannot be transferred, then it fully makes sense for the company to work with a founding laboratory in a collaboration. You can also work with CROs. So you could work with, of course, Wuxi, for example, or any other CRO that you feel has the specialty knowledge required to advance your project. Potentially, you could also, if it's a spin out from a company, there can be agreement with the originating company to pay for FTEs that are at the company required to run the project. And finally, we can talk about physical presence. So I think what's important here, especially if any of you are non-Danish, we need to distinguish between where the company is and where the people are. So one of the requirements we have is that it is a Danish corporation. That does not mean that people need to move to Denmark. I'd like to highlight that again. We're trying to build a community at the BII, but that not necessarily isn't always the only solution. So we have a physical presence requirement for Venture Lab. It is that a founder or a manager of the company participates in the Venture Lab program. This is the crunches that we're talking about, the halos that we're talking about. And if needed, BII can serve as a source of high quality managers. So we receive CVs all the time of people who are interested in working with BII spinouts, either current ones or future ones. So there is a matchmaking task here where we can match your project with future managers of your company. Hopefully there's a good overlap in skills required and also personal chemistry. The same with Creation House. We require that management of the startup is represented at BII. So if you are a scientific founder, a PI in a foreign laboratory, that's great. Set your company up at the BII. We will find staff for your company at the BII, a trusted partner for you who becomes part of your team and helps you grow the company. And we can help you source that. And this is really important to us, that all of our applicants and founders are absolutely critical for success. But I think it's important to recognize that the founders and applicants are not sufficient for success. So this has to be a collaboration between founders and applicants and the BII to fill your team and to make this happen. I can see lots of questions coming in now. We'll take those at the end. So if you want to apply, the deadline is February 23rd. You can make sure you read the application guidelines. What we have done is we've tried to front load a lot of these questions into the guidelines. It's important to check the eligibility criteria. I'll repeat that we fund companies that are founder owned. So if there are professional investors in your cap table, we'll have to do extra diligence as to who those investors are and if they pass our eligibility criteria. And as a final thing I'll say here, we want to meet you, we want to talk to you, and we want to hear your pitch. And we'd like to hear your pitch actually even before the application deadline closes. So if you're interested in talking to the BII team, please send the information we have on the left. This is a one-page abstract or slide deck that describes what are you working on, what's your team, what's your problem. We're not being very prescriptive here, but in one page, tell us briefly what you're trying to do. Send that to pitch@bii.dk. We will take a look at it, and from those, shortlist those we'd like to invite for a one-on-one session. That'll be with a 20-minute to talk to our business developers to answer your questions. For example, what program to apply to, what does it mean? What kind of team should you be looking for? So on and so forth. So highly recommend that you take a look at, you send your pitch to pitch@bii.dk.
So thanks for listening to the presentation. If you require further information, please go to the BII Innovation website, where all of our programs are well explained and detailed. And of course, if you should require further information, please reach out to pitch@bii.dk or the contact information on the BII website, where we'll be delighted to give you more information on our various calls. And we hope to hear from you soon. Thanks.